Honorable Sean Richards, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Sports et al., SKNOC President, Mr. Alfonso Bridgewater, executive members of the SKNOC, Mrs. Jennifer Nero, head of the Women's Commission in Sports for St. Kitts Nevis, representative from the Department of Gender Affairs, Mrs. Chanel Charles, colleagues from the Women in Sports Commission, Leslie Sugarbowl Morton, Dr. Garfield Alexander, ladies and gentlemen, friends, good morning and welcome to the official launch of the Women's in Sports Commission. There's no better person to give the opening remarks than the President of the SKNOC, Mr. Alfonso Bridgewater.
The protocol. I'm going to be deliberate and don't go the route because it's critical to me to identify who is here in this small little group. Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Education, Youth and Sports, Vice President Dennis Knight and other members of the executive of the St. Kitts Nevis Olympic Committee and Commonwealth Games Association, Ms. Jennifer Nero, who is the leading person with respect to this Women in Sports Commission, the representative from the Department of Gender Affairs, Ms. Charles, media representatives here in Sugar Bowl, support people. I gather that they have a specific role for Dr. Garfield Alexander, just working hard. A pleasant good Saturday morning to you, and I want to stress this Saturday morning. This ceremony is simple yet significant. It's simple yet seminal. It's simple but yet strategic. It's simple but off-season. It's simple in the sense that we're here basically to recognize one fact, one truth, that women and girls form part of the population of the world. And sometimes, if we be honest, we find ourselves in a situation where we tend to marginalize women and girls and do not give them their due recognition. The formation of this particular commission is to try and right that wrong and improve wherever we've been falling down. It's significant in the sense that we're not starting from scratch. We basically have been recognizing over the years that there's need to do something like that. So you'll find in very important ways we have been making sure whenever we pick a team, we always have the back of our minds how we going to appreciate the services of women, how women operate in a different way to men in particular. If we have a particular team going out and women on it, how we make sure that there's some woman representative in terms of delegates. And what we could do to improve the performance of females. In that sense, I'm a little worried about what's happening to our female volleyballers. There used to be a time when they were much better. Every time we have a competition, they tended to be better. They used to be the first ones called in terms of representation. For some reason now the men have overtaken them. I'm not going to be satisfied until the women reach back to that point. It's significant in the sense that I believe as well that the women folk and girls could take us back to the point in the 70s, the late 60s and the 70s, when we look to our netball players for inspiration and the source for unifying a country. And as I talk to you today, it comes back to my mind that in 1964, when the Olympic Games were held in Japan, bear in mind that 1964 were only about 20-something years after World War II. Japan was demoralized, beaten into the ground. Japan is now a major economic source, power in the world. But what happened then, it was some women who basically lifted the hearts of the whole Japanese nation. What did they do? A women volleyball team, for the very first time, women volleyballers were taking part in the Olympic Games, that's one. And they came together in the finals, bringing the whole country of Japan behind them. Played their arch rivals in the Soviet Union at the time, defeated them at home. Japan has never turned back ever since. It's a similar situation when we had our netballers here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Constantly coming second in the Caribbean until on two occasions in 73 and in 78, basically won the Caribbean competitions. And you would be amazed at what it did for a country in terms of unity, the solidarity in the country, and basically inspiration for young women and girls. Everybody at the time wanted to play netball. They went on further from that. And basically the only time we have played in the World Championships on netball was in '79 in Trinidad, and we came fifth in the world. Bear in mind that at that very same tournament, 3 people tied for first. So you got to understand the significance of being placed fifth. England, Trinidad and Tobago, and Australia. Wales were the only other team in between there. St. Kitts was next in the entire world. I believe you ladies have the capacity, knowing from which, for this, the place from which all of you have come, to bring us back to those heights and basically raise the level of inspiration, self-belief, self-esteem of young ladies in particular. I did say it is simple. I said it's significant for that purpose, but it's also strategic, because the St. Kitts Nevis Olympic Committee and Commonwealth Games Association have developed a strategic plan for 2017 to 2020. Critical component in that plan is exactly what we're going to do for women and girls, in terms of the numbers of them who will be definitely targeting to make sure that teams going out to represent St. Kitts and Nevis, we have done all we could to get women on that team. We want to be able to see our women 4x100 back into it, and it's possible. It's possible if we only work at it. So it's significant in the role, and I want this particular commission to take on as a charge of their own, to know that strategic plan inside out, and don't feel any particular way if you focus primarily on women, because some of us have a tendency to forget and just keep us on the right road. I'm saying this to you as the president of the association. Keep us on track in terms of, so what does that mean for women? What does that mean for girls? Please do not be afraid to hold us to that level of standards. So it's significant in that sense, and you'll find out that going forward, anyhow we have a team, there will always be some focus, some deliberate reflection on how we could move forward in terms of assisting women. So you'll find us in terms of putting out, launching particular programs of training where we'll have women participating, so that when we're looking for a chef de mission, it won't always be male. So when we're looking for a manager of a team going to represent us as Commonwealth Games at the Olympics, it won't always be male. When we're looking for people to represent us as a media representative, it won't always be male. But here's a charge I'll put out to you as women. Do not be afraid to accept something, some responsibility that you've never done before. I end up in sports, and it wasn't something I played sports, but that's not where I wanted to go every time. If you ask me what I want to do, you want to be in that. But don't be afraid to take on a challenge you have never done. I'm sure if Desiree said she was going to, she told me years ago she was going to be so much involved in business, you want to be in the car. If Jennifer told me that she was going to be in accounts and all that type of thing, even the accounts she loves so much, she ain't in it no more. Right? So do not be afraid. When you're asked to take on a task, say, I don't understand this, who I could get to help me, as opposed to say, man, that I'm running from that. Because us men tend to use that as an opportunity to get around you all the time. You'll never take on the challenge. I have had to deal with women in sports, and they only bring but value to the table. So I don't want to lose the value you could bring. I certainly don't want to read it. Football in St. Kitts and Nevis is the better for the number of women I've seen being involved in it. Track and field has been the better for the women in it. And ever since we have incorporated women into the Olympic Committee in our level, we have been the better for it. You only have to think whether or not you had a mother and what happens. We don't want to lose that particular. So it's simple. It's significant, but it's also seminal, because anyhow we're moving on from here, we want to go back to the benchmarks identified in our strategic plan. That would be our Bible, so to speak. How does this relate to that strategic plan? Beyond that, we also have a mandate, which makes it even more seminal. We have a mandate from the International Olympic Committee to say, this is what you have to do specific to women. And sometimes to the extent that if they're offering training opportunities, you can't get the training opportunities unless you have women comprising the team you're sending. So much so if they're paying for 2, in some instances, they say we'll only pay for 2 if 1 is woman. And that's, you could understand the reason why they're forcing some organizations, some Olympic committees to make sure, otherwise it won't happen. So we do a lot of that, you'll find becomes the nature. We adopting a lot of that as far as the St. Kitts and Nevis Olympic Committee and Commonwealth Games Association. But beyond that, what we're doing today is also of season. Because right now, we just come out of celebrating the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees Week of Activities. And one of the themes of it had to do with women. Because you could imagine, this is March, and this is Women's International Year. So a lot of the organizations in their celebration were focusing on women. We did likewise here. You'll recognize apart from, so this particular ceremony we're having was to fit into that, but other things came up, and that's why we're making sure it still happens in March, but it didn't happen last week when we had the big celebration of women, of the SKNOC week. But it's still here. The spirit is still there as part of SKNOC week. Beyond that, quietly, but just as critical, last week, or 2 weeks ago, we also had hosted here the Eastern Caribbean Volleyball Association General Assembly. Critical in a sense that we were all happening in March. The minister was there, but we also had visiting the vice president of the International Volleyball Association, and Gwen Clinnan, who is also the president of the Eastern Caribbean Volleyball Association. And I pause here to say this. You'll find one of the other things we'll be pushing from our Olympic and Commonwealth Games Association level is to get our people in St. Kitts and Nevis onto sub-regional, regional, continental, and international bodies. I've been at a number of forums, and we have people here. When I see some of the people who get onto these forums, I wonder why we didn't do more in order to get our people here. And one of the areas where a vacuum exists is in the field of women. And as I look out upon the women I see here now, there are a number of areas where different members here could fill those spots with their eyes closed. So we have to find a way how we could get our people, not only for their own self-development, but what they could bring to these sub-regional, regional, continental, and international organizations, and what they could learn as well. Because funny enough, I'm not saying anything new if I tell you that St. Kitts and Nevis has a lot to teach people. They'll find out that day after day, I'll sit down around the table with international people, the vice president, Mr. Knight, sit down, and because we tended to be quiet for a while, you watch them until you open your mouth, and they keep doing so. Till this day, they're still getting started at the things we would say, because we come from a 50,000 country, 50,000 population country. But that's the level of that, and I think you could do that as women. And as I said, I repeat now, there are opportunities as far as women are concerned out there just waiting for you to take up. It's also of season because in July of this year, the inaugural volleyball associate, the inaugural SKNOC, and get accustomed to these acronyms. You heard SKNOC, which is the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees. I'm now mentioning SKNOC, with the Association of National Olympic Committees of the Eastern Caribbean, the equivalent of the OECS in Olympic. All right? We're having, every year, we have what we call the SKNOC track and field competition, and it moves around to one of the other countries in the OECS. We've been having that for several years, almost 5 years now. But we want to do something different, to have an additional competition in an additional discipline. And the discipline we have chosen is beach volleyball. So beach volleyball is coming on stream in St. Kitts. The inaugural tournament is happening in St. Kitts in July. And it's for both female and male. We want to transform Frigate Bay area over at, Four Seasons, to introduce a new sport. Bring with it, those of you who have been at tournaments, whether Olympic, Pan American, or wherever, you see how volleyball, beach volleyball, transforms the entire tournament. All right? So wherever it's going to be taking a whole economic level. And I know there's some activities. I don't know how soon between now and next year some things will be happening over on this trip and that type of thing. If you go today, for example, a little later, you will find that the volleyballers, the beach volleyballers, are practicing there all day. And that's the male volleyballers who have qualified to participate this year in the Commonwealth Games competition. And they deserve a round of applause for that. Okay? So they leave here around March the 29th or 30th to travel to the Gold Coast, Australia to participate. But they have also qualified for July, August to participate in the Central American and Caribbean Games in Barranquilla, Colombia. That being said, your female volleyball beach volleyball players have also qualified to participate in volleyball. As I conclude, I just want to say to you, I do not have any doubts about your commitment ever since we've been having these planning sessions. I consider the planning sessions that we had to have been, if I remember my Sunday school days well, to be like the baptism. Today's session, as simple as it is confirmation. So this is the confirmation. You know, when you dress up in your white and you come to confirmation, the only thing we want to ask you to do is to come up here and say a verse from the Bible. All right? But this is confirmation. Confirmation in the sense that you're getting the commitment from the Olympic Committee and Commonwealth Games Association that we're going to be supporting you to the hill. Hold us over the coals in terms of the day. We're not bringing the women in here just simply to be caretakers. You do a good job of that, so we want your expertise in being caretakers. But we want you to be unique in your sense. Set the standard for the rest of the other commissions in the Caribbean in terms of what you do, or the level to which you get involved. And some things off the top of my head where you agree with. Every time we have a competition, you want to know, you put a special interest in the women athletes that are potential and actually going. When we look at, even starting from tomorrow if you want, any particular organization holding a competition, we got to see an improvement in the medal ceremony. And you don't have to look to the Olympic Committee or the Commonwealth Games Association only to that, some small things to do. There's nothing to prevent us from us having every school, it's an idea which came up, every school playing its anthem or some component of its anthem before you actually get it. You know what that does? You see what Kim Collins does sometimes when people and all people like, what a female athlete next to your name, Donna? When they end up on the podium and you hear the anthem playing and the choir, some of us in the audience and so as spectators, quite even more than them. You know what that could do for a school who has the school song playing just so that I want to go, because you're only playing the winner, by the way. And then imagine next week with all what's happening at the Inter-High School Championship, and you had 45 seconds, which is what happens at the Commonwealth Games and the Olympic Games. You just play 45 seconds. Sandy Point School, for example, they'll win 1 or 2. You know, Bastia High School, Washi, the song played. Can't beat that. And those are the type of things we're doing. I hear the cheering competition is taking on quite a different thing now, and I really want to stop have Miss Martin in my ear, what are we doing for them, the type of thing. But now it ain't going to be possible until she here, because they are provisionally accepted as an Olympic sport now as well. But give it a unique sense, because so that people don't just necessarily see the cheerleaders in its traditional sense, but they could see it what. So there's a host of other things where we pay little attention to, but the women folk just good at doing that, the business side of us. Because we're not going to be, for the next 10, 15 years, we're not necessarily all the funds we have now come from Commonwealth Games, or even more so the Olympic Committee. One day, we're going to have to be able to bring in much more on we own. When we got money, sometimes the women them get shortchanged. You can imagine when we don't got. So even if you got to raise some funds and you're saying specifically, this is what it is for. So I want to challenge you. This confirmation here this morning is basically like you would have done in the church ceremony. You come to the community of the church and you say, I am here, this is what I'm committing. This is a public commitment on your part and on our part. We're going to hold each other to it. And I want to promise you forever that I want you to do more than just participate. I really want you to be involved. And I'll end with this little story. There was a farmer, all the animals on the farm working hard, but the farmer was about to get married. So he wanted his guests were coming to it, and he wanted to plan what the menu. And just like how we do in organizations like this, they had a committee. The committee was made up of the hen and the pig. So imagine the hen and the pig sitting down to plan menu. So of course, here's the hen saying, well, we're going to have eggs and bacon. The pig steady and paused for ages. And said, so I understand where you're going. What you want to tell me? While you will be participating, are you going to be involved? Have a good day.
At this point, I'd like to call on Mrs. Jennifer Nero, the leader of the SKNOC's Women in Sports Commission to present on the mission, the role and responsibilities of this very important commission.
Please allow me to adopt the protocol so ably established by Ms. Julie Martin. I must, however, take a moment to thank our Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Sean Richards, for all of his support and encouragement, and also to recognize the representative from Gender Affairs in the person of Ms. Chanel Charles. Welcome. My role here this morning is pretty straightforward. It is to share with you the specific mission, role, and responsibilities for the St. Kitts and Nevis Olympic Committee's Women in Sport Commission. The St. Kitts and Nevis Olympic Committee has selected a team of talented and competent volunteers to serve on this commission. They were chosen based on their sterling contributions to sport and their selfless involvement in uplifting community activities. I must say, I am delighted, indeed, to have the opportunity to serve with this highly skilled team. Could you please give the team a round of applause? Thank you. The mission of the Women in Sport Commission is to promote equal opportunities for girls and women to participate in and benefit from sport and physical activity. As you let that soak in. The role of the Women in Sport Commission is to advise the St. Kitts and Nevis Olympic Committee, the President, on the development and implementation of the SKNOC's Women and Sport Policy, and to promote equal opportunities for girls and women to participate in and benefit from sport and physical activity. The responsibilities. The responsibilities of the Women in Sport Commission are to advise on the development and implementation of a St. Kitts and Nevis Olympic Committee Women in Sport strategy, on the advocacy for increased participation of women athletes in the Olympic program and in leadership positions in the Olympic movement, and promoting the rights and well-being of women and girls in and through sport, and greater access to sport for girls and women. On the recognition of achievements of individuals and organizations promoting women and through sport, including the Women's Sports Awards, which we have to reestablish. On the development and dissemination of SKNOC's position on women and sport issues, and monitoring and regularly reporting on the progress of the sporting community in meeting gender equality. On the promotion of the use of sport as a tool for gender equality and empowerment, and raising awareness of harassment and abuse in sport. On supporting development of women's skills in management and leadership within the sporting community, including through training, seminars, workshops, and mentoring. And lastly, on the support of local projects benefiting girls and women through providing grants for women and sport awardees to implement identified projects. The intense agenda will require meaningful collaboration with a wide cross-section of stakeholders, which include but are not limited to the ministries responsible for sport and gender affairs, along with non-government civic organizations. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can sense from the responsibilities as laid out above that this is an exciting opportunity for us to help to advance our nation's development agenda by being more expansive and inclusive through the active involvement with this awesome sport platform. We simply cannot afford to miss out on the tremendous benefits of this wholesome agenda for inclusion and for bringing more of our girls and women on board with this new wave of a more productive and healthy lifestyle through sport and other physical activities. Everyone is encouraged to participate in this very progressive Olympic mission. I thank you.
Pleasure is mine to now invite the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Sport, the Honorable Sean Richard, to give the feature address. Mr. Richard.
President of the SKNOC, Mr. Bridgewater, other executive members, Mrs. Jennifer Nero, coordinator of the Commission, other distinguished persons, good morning to all. Good morning. As I sat here this morning, Mr. Bridgewater said to me that he's going to continue to wake me up every Saturday. And the truth is that for the past few weeks, my Saturdays have been spent doing something related to sports. As a matter of fact, when Mrs. Nero called me this week to invite me to give remarks at this forum, and I must say remarks, not the feature address. I responded to her by saying, she asked me, what happened, you already have an engagement? I said, no. But it seems as though I have no Saturdays available to myself within recent times. It's sports days within the schools, sometimes 2 in 1 Saturday. A few weeks ago, I was giving remarks at the Eastern Caribbean Volleyball Association meeting. Today, as we know, inter-primary, have to give remarks there. Next week, inter-secondary. And then I was there thinking after next week, it's finished. But I'm actually wrong, because the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and the other central banks within the region, they are hosting their own sporting activities here during the Easter weekend. And again, I have to give remarks. But I suppose it's the nature of the job. And I must say, though, that in any event, I am happy to be here this morning to bring remarks on the launch of the SKNOC's Women in Sports Commission. Many have suggested different mechanisms as the great equalizer in life. It has been proposed that education, religion, political ideology, and time are all facets which can contribute to removing the differences between persons and society. Truth be told, sport is a true vehicle of equality. The rules that apply to one applies to all. Everyone starts at the beginning and finishes at the end. The path to victory is the same for all, and sport embraces all, irrespective of creed or class. However, the other side of the truth is that while sport may be the perfect tool to promote equality, it is only as good as its application. The Ministry of Sport and the government and people of St. Kitts and Nevis applaud the SKNOC on this initiative to provide opportunity to meet the needs of the women in our society. The achievements of our sportswomen, both on and off the field of play, have been a source of pride for our nation. Whether it is in athletics, netball, football, golf, basketball, volleyball, tennis, or table tennis, Our girls always show up and turn up. Our netballers have been world beaters, just as our track athletes have been a consistent force. One becomes aware of the rich heritage of our women's participation in sport when you start name dropping. If one were to ask who is the greatest or most impactful female sportswoman that St. Kitts Nevis has ever produced, the names would range from our Caribbean netball champions of the 1970s to the mold breaker Judith Gums, our first international tennis player in Velma Rollins, to our numerous track stars. The list would go on and on and on. However, it is incumbent upon us to realize that while we may have done well, we have done way less than we could have done, and this must be remedied. The Ministry of Sport has begun the necessary steps to make the national sports policy a reality. We have been operating on a basic tri-pillared framework of sport for all, sport for development, and excellence in sport. The work that is being done by the National Olympic Committee, and specifically the work that will be done by this commission, is crucial to the articulation of any policy. We cannot claim to be providing sport for all when there is no equity of access to quality sporting opportunities. It is the vision of the Ministry of Sport that we can partner with the SKNOC, the national federations of the different sports, education, and all other stakeholders to achieve certain specific goals. 1. Physical space for women to participate in sport. Often, girls are squeezed out of the community playing fields. They are not seen as serious athletes, especially when gender biases of male versus female sports are applied. I don't think that it is difficult for any of us to imagine that. You take a walk to any of the sporting facilities around St. Kitts and Nevis, and the majority of persons you see utilizing these facilities are indeed our males. Basketball, football, volleyball, table tennis, lawn tennis, cricket. Julie is saying. The exceptions, of course, would be cheerleading and netball. But in the majority of other sports, they are dominated by males. And so we have to ensure that we get more females utilizing the sporting facilities in our island. As a matter of fact, when you consider the fact that the majority of homes are headed by females, you have a large percentage of females in the working population, it means that females are very much contributing to the very same sporting facilities, whether through tax dollars or otherwise. And so females must also utilize these facilities. Earlier this week, I had a visit by the regional president of the Lions Club, and he pointed out that the past few years, the concentration has been on assisting persons with vision. However, there is now the recognition that diabetes in particular has been contributing to a lot of the problems that we are seeing with persons and their eyesight. So that the vision is now moving to concentrating on diabetes. And as we spoke, we not only spoke to the issue of what we eat, but quite importantly, the importance of physical exercise on a daily basis. He pointed out that in Barbados, quite a number of young persons have been deemed to be obese. It is no different here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And we have quite a number of females who I think would fall into that category. And so we need to ensure that we get not only persons eating more healthy, but get more females involved in sporting opportunities. And so I think, again, that the work of this commission is indeed quite important and very laudable. 2, provision of appropriate equipment. Girls often have to play with equipment of the wrong weight and size, as only male participation is catered to. This affects form and function. And again, that is a reality. You look at most of the equipment, and the equipment is catering for the males, partly because, as we go back to the first point, the majority of persons who utilize the sporting facilities are males, and so we have catered more or less for the males. And so as we get more and more females involved in sports, we need to ensure that we have equipment which also cater for the females amongst us. 3, safety. The manifestation of extreme violence against women is a systematic social and security issue. In promoting sport for all, the female playing field must be predator-free. The female playing field must be predator-free. And as I thought about that, it's not just the field itself if you're looking at the physical space, because we would have heard just a few weeks ago of the case within the US where quite a number of female athletes were being abused. I think it's by a doctor, it is a physiotherapist, who had been assisting them with training. And so we have to be careful that we not just have males on the physical field preying on our female athletes, but all of the persons who are involved, we do not have persons preying on the female athletes. It is a real concern which must be addressed, because if that, of course, becomes the reality, then we will regress in that women will not be motivated and encouraged to participate in sporting activities. And I know, again, I think it would have been sometime last year through the Ministry of Gender Affairs, and I think it could have been UNICEF or one of those other overseas organizations. We had some seminars being held right here in St. Kitts with the coaches from the sports department, and the area of focus was on ensuring that the athletes are not being abused by the coaches. Stereotyping. The perception that sport is an antisocial and non-progressive avenue of development for females must be remedied. Girls and women are often barred from sports by family members due to the perception that it is a waste of time. That is a stereotype that we have to overcome. It's perhaps part of the reason why we don't have more women participating in sports on our various play fields. But I think we need to move towards that general recognition that just as men have been able to excel in sport, so women have been able to excel. And the examples are before us to look at. When we speak of St. Kitts, yes, the most celebrated athlete here is Kim Collins. And quite often, again, when we make the case of that, there is that expectation that the next good athlete from St. Kitts will probably be a male. And we need to move away from that sort of thinking and similarly encourage our females to be at the top. A female can very well be the next Kim Collins here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And we need to recognize all of our athletes generally. As we look around the federation and we look at the sporting facilities, perhaps it is that we need to begin to name more and more of the sporting facilities, ensure that some of them are named after females, because I think that is one way, not just in developing national pride, but in helping to encourage our youngsters and in helping to encourage our females. We have the Pam Tyson Netball Complex, we have the Kim Collins Athletic Stadium, the Warner Park, we hear the Warner Park cricket facility, we hear the Warner Park football stadium, and as you go to most of the other fields, no name. You have the Gilbert Field, but the sporting facilities for the most part, they are nameless. And just as we would have begun naming a number of schools after persons who would have made a contribution in terms of education, we need to do the same with our sporting facilities. I am quite sure that if we look within all of the communities, there are persons who we can identify who have made a significant contribution towards the development of sports. And so, Mrs. Nero, while you're doing your work, and yes, I'm the Minister of Sports, but you can put pressure on my ministry and on myself to get that aspect of the work going. In closing, the Ministry of Sport wishes to endorse and pledge support to this commission and wishes the commission and the SKNOC every success in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Richards. Thank you, firstly, for gracing us with your presence. I know it's a very busy time, this being the sports season. And thank you for the remarks. And the black sand, sorry. I'm happy that your government will be partnering with the SKNOC's Women in Sports Commission, and so we eagerly look forward to any form of assistance that you may be able to give. We hope that you'll be able to encourage other departments in government to give assistance when called upon so to do. At this point, I would like to ask the SKNOC President once again to come forward for the declaration of the launch.
Just before I make the declaration, let me just make the point. It's not by chance it's named a commission. I've been basically jump a couple loops, because sometimes we start out by naming something as a working committee. Sometimes we hear things named as a committee. But when you get a big name, a commission, the expectations are greater. So you skipped working committee, you skipped committee, and you're a commission. The other thing I'm going to say just before I move to the declaration is I want to embarrass a couple of people who might be rather modest. One of them isn't here. I did make reference to the appointment of people to various positions on the sub-regional and regional, continental, international levels. Mr. Quinlan is a tall, tall man, but he sometimes could escape and put himself into oblivion, so to speak. But he's no mean gentleman in the volleyball world. He's a member of the International Volleyball Association. He's the president of the Eastern Caribbean Volleyball Association, among other things, apart from being treasurer of the Olympic Committee. And we also have in our presence, as much as she mightn't want me to say this, and I hope you always support me after the fact when she's hitting me over the head, Mrs. Jennifer Nero is a member of the Executive Committee of the Olympic Committee and Commonwealth Games Association. But I'm sure most of you would have recognized over the past couple of years, she's also a member of Cricket West Indies, and more specifically is the person responsible for coordinating the Women's World Cup female competition, which is taking place in the Caribbean. I want to use this opportunity now, as I welcome all of you to Olympic House, to officially declare that as of today, March 17, in the month normally associated with International Women's Year, that we have officially launched at the Olympic Committee the Women's and Sports Commission.
We're now going to have a very symbolic ceremony in this launch. It's called the pinning ceremony. What I'm going to do is to call the names of the members of the Women's and Sports Commission. They're here, one at a time. I'm also calling on the General Secretary of the SKNOC, Mr. Glenn Jeffers, to assist with the actual pinning. This pinning ceremony is a symbolic welcoming of all of the members of the SKNOC's Women in Sports Commission. It also signifies our firm commitment to the SKNOC insofar as ensuring that there are more girls and women not only actively involved playing the sport, but being elected in positions of responsibility in clubs, associations, federations, commissions, etc. So, Mrs. Jennifer Nero. There's Lynn Sharp. Donna Morton. Diane Brown. Michelle Liebert. Diana Palmer. Virgil Hodge. Valerie Richardson Mason. Malisha Caesar. Leslie Sugar Bowl Morton. Yvette Brown.